Welcome to the Australian Business Executive Podcast, where we speak with Australia's most influential industry professionals on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all our content, including our magazines, podcasts and videos by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is PhD Media CEO Mark Jarrett. Mark is proud to lead Australia's fastest growing media agency and in 2022 most awarded agency. PhD has been recognized by the AFR as one of the most innovative companies in Australia in 2018, 19, 20, 21, and 2022 as the AFR's #1 most innovative company in the media and marketing industry space. His comms planning background reflects a passion for understanding what motivates and drives people. Mark's long media career has afforded him insight and experience across almost every major industry category, including alcohol, finance, FMCG, automotive, telecoms, travel, government, and QSR. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Jesse.
So, as I mentioned to you, and why we arranged this from the start, advertising is a pretty deep industry with a lot of misconceptions. So why don't you just give us an overview of PhD's areas of service and we can branch from there?
Yeah, okay. Well, I think first and foremost, people that know the space a little bit would think of PhD as a media agency. What that means for us is a strategic and planning driven agency that then, as well as looking at communications planning and how to connect with audiences that our customers, the businesses that we deal with, want to sell their products to. We then take those insights through to media buying, which includes traditional media, so things like TV and outdoor, but also digital media, so Meta, Google, and so on. And also work with our clients on data and the increasing need for understanding consumers through the plethora of data that's out there.
So what becomes the expectations from your clients then when it comes to marketing and advertising exercises and campaigns?
Well, I think at a very simplistic level, they're looking for a return on their investment. So people often talk about media spend, but really what we're talking about is advertising and media investment. So they need to drive sales. And depending on the type of client and depending on their approach, they need to drive sales either now, in the short term, today, tomorrow, this week, or maybe this month. Or sometimes they're looking at the longer term as well. How do they create advertising that will benefit their business over the next 1, 2, or 3 years? We know that generally through marketing science and many studies that have been done that sales are driven by going broad and looking at a long-term approach. However, that does contradict many business cycles where clients and businesses need a result this quarter, this month, or this week.
I guess I think you'd mentioned the term. So what is really the difference, kind of alluding to that, when we talk about going wide versus going deep when it comes to a company's marketing and advertising?
Well, I think you can do both. And I think perhaps an example of where you can go both wide and deep would be a client of ours, Virgin Australia, where they run broad brand awareness campaigns. So Bring On Wonderful is their current brand campaign that is focused on telling all of Australia about their business, about their service, and creating value for the brand in their customers' eyes that will mean they're highly considered over the coming months and years. Simultaneously, though, they go deep as well because we look to help them optimize against each route, each flight, and make sure that they're filling their seats for every single plane flight and every single route they're driving. So I think that client of ours is quite a good example of how you can go wide and deep simultaneously.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. From the outset, I guess if you're working with a new client, how do you develop marketing? How is this research developed and interpreted from the outset?
Well, I think the most important thing is actually understanding what we're trying to achieve. And I think sometimes that gets lost. It becomes about advertising and reaching people with a message and creating awareness. And And really for a business or a client of ours, that's not what we're actually trying to achieve. What we're trying to achieve is their business goals, which ultimately is sales in some way, shape or form. But there are lots of nuances of timeline, of the value or the price that they're trying to deliver for that we need to understand. So fundamentally, it's about understanding what we're trying to deliver and also measuring that from the very beginning to the very end of the campaign. Often advertising gets put out there without people understanding what they're trying to achieve. Beyond that, once we get into the details of it, it's about identifying an audience, a specific audience that might be the right sort of tailored messaging for the client and for the brand, but then also understanding the wider audience that brand needs to reach and talk to, and then understanding how we can do that in the most effective way and what sort of channels we might use to do that, be it TV, be it outdoor, be it through online channels such as Google or YouTube and so on. So it's about understanding what we're trying to achieve and then the most efficient way of delivering that in terms of targeting people, and then negotiating with those media owners to get the best quality, the best placement, and the best rates.
We're in the middle of both inflation and recession that seems to be hitting us. What sort of becomes the challenges with working with clients in this space where capital might not be as freely available or results have to happen now because it's dependent upon their survival over the next few quarters?
Yeah, well, look, we are in the middle of inflation. That's definitely true. I think I would challenge you on the fact that we're in the middle of a recession. Technically, we're not in a recession at the moment, and I think people generally talking things down can actually drive that. So I would challenge the fact
stay
that
positive.
We're in a recession to start with. So without being deluded, I think it is important to stay positive within this. But there's no doubt it is a difficult business environment, which if I look at our sector in the first 3 months of this year in terms of advertising holistically is down about 5.5%. But if you look at government advertising and the tech sector, they actually account for about 4.5% of that downturn. The government downturn is because of big spending around the federal election last year, and I'm sure everyone is more than aware of the tech woes. So the market's down 1% if you take those things out. So that's not great where everyone looks for growth, but it's not a complete disaster. So I think for us and for our clients, we're actually in control of a lot more than we've been in the last 3 or 4 years. You look through the COVID crisis, you look through certainly in the services industry that we work in, you look through the talent crisis in Australia, especially last year. Those things were really out of our control, whereas we're now in a market where we're in tough times, but we're also in control of our own destiny within that. So it's difficult, but it's not impossible, and it does vary by sector. There are sectors that are actually on the up within these economic environments as well.
I don't think we had intended to discuss this, but I'll just take a slight detour and ask you this question, because you had mentioned the sort of the fight for talent. You're obviously from overseas, as I am. Well, what's the impression these days of the Australian advertising market? It's obviously not as big as a beast as other places, but is this still treated as I guess like a training ground for a lot of larger markets in the rest of the world?
No, not at all. I've been here a long time now. It's 15 years since I moved across from London. But I think there was a perception in Australia that Australia was somehow years behind, whereas I think the reality is in some areas it's 6 months behind, not years behind. And in some areas, some of the innovation that is then adopted globally actually comes out of this market. So certainly don't view it as a training ground for other global areas. And I think the other important thing to think about, if you look at the overall advertising market, Australia's market is about the same size as France's. Right. France is 3 times the population of Australia. So the intensity and consumption of advertising and innovating to try and reach consumers in Australia is actually way above many Western countries that we would perhaps think as being more advanced than us.
We were talking a little bit, perhaps we're not encountering the downturn that I had perceived it. But one of the things I had always heard about is the importance of sort of investing when this does happen. Why is that important for a company's, advertising and marketing strategy?
So every single piece of evidence shows that a company that invests during a downturn has greater market share at the end of a downturn. And as soon as the downturn changes and things start going up again, which we know every cycle has a down and an up, and we are ever more closer to an up the longer the downturn goes down. The one with the biggest market share is going to see a massively disproportionate return in terms of their sales, their income. And what you'll see is that many private companies continue to invest through downturns because they know that they are going to, in the long term, make significantly more money, significantly more sales, and gain significantly more market share by taking that approach. The only challenge they have is that is a long-term strategy that will pay off in 1, 2, 3 years' time, which is great for private organisations because that's not a long time frame for them, but can be difficult for listed companies where a quarter is often their maximum time frame.
Right. Okay. We're starting to wind down, so maybe you could give us an insight into what's happening at a wider industry level with activity.
Yeah, I think probably the big thing at the moment is the privacy law reviews that are happening at the moment. The privacy laws date back to 1988 in Australia. That was the last time they were updated. And funnily enough, a lot of things have changed since then. So there's a recent report that's 317 pages long that's been published by the government. And that will form the basis of changes in the law to drive greater privacy for consumers. At the same time, though, that will change in some way, yet to be decided, the level of targeting, especially in digital media, that companies and advertisers can use. I think the secondary part of that, not just on the targeting space, is it's important for companies to, whoever they are, to understand what's happening in that space, because the likelihood of people, or the risk of people having data breaches within the first party data, i.e. the stuff consumers have filled in when they've contacted your business and giving you data directly, is probably high. So really important from a risk perspective that all businesses, no matter what they are, really begin to understand what might be happening in this space in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, Mark, I do appreciate your time today and hope that maybe we can do this again sometime in the future.
Yeah, no, really great to chat, and appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
This has been a production of the Australian Business Executive, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited, all rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Australian Business Executive, including our magazines, podcasts and videos, by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.